Good morning. Welcome back to the ALG show. No, I hit the wrong button. So my audio interface that I use to record this show has like these little preset buttons, and I meant to hit the applause, but I guess whatever. Anyways, today we're going to be talking with Ricardo Vazquez. He's been a friend of mine for a long time and is a bit of a jack of all trades when it comes to filmmaking. With working in roles ranging from an audience coordinator on The Price is Right to either directing or writing independent short films for his production company. Today, we're going to be talking about his current work as well as people and things he finds inspiration from. Before we get started, I wanted to mention a few links that I've put in the show notes, being for Tilta and Prism Lens Effects. Those are both affiliate links, meaning that anything purchased through either site gives me a small kickback at no extra cost to you. If you end up purchasing anything with those links, I deeply appreciate it as it helps support me as a cinematographer as well as the work I do here on the ALG show. And yeah, without any further ado, let's get into it.
We just started this season about 2 weeks ago. So I started working full time as a crew member on The Price is Right, which is really fun. And I started as a page initially at Television City, and I was just there for 2 seasons. And so when they moved, they're like, "We need people who know the show," and so then they hired me as an audience coordinator, like full time. But the whole thing has been so interesting. If you want to know about that.
No, yeah, I mean that's what we're here to talk about. So what was that transition like from this previous company going to The Price is Right as like an audience coordinator? And what is like, I don't know too much about like audience coordinating, so what does that like responsibility entail?
So the funny thing is that at Television City, that show had been there for 50 years or whatever it was, and so they had built the show into the building, and so everything was just accustomed to, where the contestants go, where all the crew goes, where all the games and prizes go, whatever it is. They had warehouses and stuff. But then once they moved, um, they had to do just a bunch of makeshift stuff where all the offices are literally in a church. Like all the offices for my work is in a Korean church preschool. And it's exactly like 21 Jump Street where we are integrated into it, and so we have to have literal like dividers that will separate us from the school. And then we're bringing in contestants with their name tags and stuff, and you walk by a classroom and there's this little children in there learning about who knows what. So that's been like the journey this past 2 weeks. But in terms of like what I actually do is we work with audience company known as OCA, so they're on-camera audiences,
Hmm.
and so they're in charge of like getting the tickets for all the contestants and stuff. But once they get there, um, we're bringing them in. We're like doing their paperwork. Doing like interviews for them because they have to get interviewed before they get picked on the show. And so, but my job is once they get there, is I'm making sure that they're doing exactly what they need to do. So like once they finish a game, that they follow me and they just listen to what I have to say. Um, and then like once they like win something or whatever it is, I take them to like a prize department. I help them do their paperwork. Um, and so like I'm always on the stage when I'm there. Um,
So
so
you're
that's why
you're
my label is.
you're basically making sure people don't people are in the right place when they need to be, essentially.
Yeah, because literally, if they win something and they go onto that stage, dude, they just go blank. Like I'll point to a direction, and like if there's a wall there, they'll probably just go through the wall. Like
Oh
they don't
no.
they. I've never seen people lose that like so much sense of like reality before, which is crazy. But
I can't even
yes,
imagine though,
I
especially with like a large prize that somebody wins. Like I would just be, my mind would be blank, you know?
dude, yeah, like I've like when they've won like a really nice BMW. and then I have to go grab them, and then I'm like, follow me, and I'm like pointing, I'm like, look at me, follow me, and they're just like looking around, just like lost.
Little
That's like the
days.
funniest part. Like you, that's the reason why I like working that show too, is that you get to meet like every type of personality that the world has to offer, and it's just so funny. Um, but the reason why I also like is that I'm just around the crew so often, and they get
Yeah.
to know me, they know my name, so my name is in their mouth like, you know, 75% of the day, which is what I want. And so for me, it's working out that way.
Yeah, that's cool, and like it's kind of an opportunity to kind of just like peek between certain shows that like obviously like I see the prices right on TV, and I don't work in unscripted really, so like my whole perception of unscripted is very different than it probably is. Actually, I'm lying to you. I've done one unscripted show. It was back in like 2021. I did a show for Revolt. Um, chaos, chaos.
No,
I
really.
can't even like imagine like um, we had a pre-light day and then we had the actual shoot day. So the pre-light is very tame, like obviously because it's just crew there. There's maybe like 80 of us running around in like this 3-story mansion. So it's a show for Revolt. It was for this guy named Justin LeBoy. At the time, he was like this internet person, and he was getting big on like Instagram Live and stuff. And so for this pre-light, we were just getting everything together, making sure because we had to light maybe about maybe like 30, not 30 people, like maybe 15, 20 people because we had the main talent in the front.
That's a lot of people.
We had two hosts, and then we had the two guests, which at that time was Sweetie, and then a friend of hers. So it was 4 people on this main sort of couch, and then there was like a kind of a background audience. So instead of this audience, like what you probably do, the audience is like behind the camera. The audience was in front of it. So we had to make sure, like for certain people that were given microphones, we wanted to kind of highlight them. Like what I did for one of them was like this girl had a mic and she needed to like sit forward, and we gave her like a little light with like a Joe Lico and just to kind of pop her out a little bit. But with
Yeah.
everybody like being on that side of the camera, I guess it was like easier for me to manage. Like I'm not worried about somebody random coming into my space with the camera, or just interjecting between some random person trying to watch the show. It was like no, everybody was in front of the camera. Even then, like seeing Sweetie and like all these big name celebrities kind of walking around and just like it was a very odd experience for me, at least for me, because it was like one of the first few times I had worked with like some big name people, and I guess you forget that like they're
Right.
just people. you know I can't imagine having to
Yeah.
coordinate all these different people because I'm just looking at it like damn, there's a lot going on you know
Yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully, like, when I'm there, I don't really I don't deal with talent, and it's literally the talent's literally just the host, the announcer, and then like some models, and then the models I don't really talk to, and then Drew Carey, who's the host of the show, who's by the way like one of the coolest celebrities like ever. Like he during the strike he paid for writers' meals at Bob's Big Boy,
incredible.
and so people they just had to show their card, and he would pay like full price for all their meals. So he really cool guy.
What a
But
legend.
celebrities by far, yeah, one of the coolest ones.
What a legend, man. So obviously you do this audience coordination, but I've known you for a very long time. And I know
Dude,
you've
I think
done.
it's like is it like 13? Is it No, sorry. Is it 10 or 11? It might be 11 years.
Oh, that's like 10 years, bro. 10, 11 years.
No, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Point is, let's not get into that
A long
discussion.
time.
A long time. And I know you've always had sort of this knack for filmmaking, right? And this show, obviously, you being an audience coordinator and you having been a head page before that, this isn't your first rodeo, bro. Like obviously you do other stuff outside of that. Like I recently saw you put out a short film, or not that you put out a short film. You were the DP for a short film called "This Sucks." You want to like talk about that experience? What was that like? Because my understanding, this is your first time uh, DPing a project.
Yeah. So what Oxposito, who's the other collaborator that I'm working with, who we know, we just randomly, honestly, just wanted to buy a camera, and we wanted to buy something that was cheap. And so then we got the idea of creating this kind of production company because we have like our own like studios that we label on our short films or whatever it is, but
Mm-hmm.
that's for like our individual stuff. But now what we wanted to do is create this very tiny and small production company right now that is called Shut Up and Deal.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole plan was for us to buy all of our equipment, but buy it cheap. And so just like slowly and surely just build up our setup and stuff. And then for people who that we know want to use our camera, that we can also lend them to them and then kind of expand that way. But right now we're starting small. And so um, Alex Pasito had an idea for a short film, and so then we're like, you know what? It's less than 15 pages. It's very easy, minimal locations. I'm like, let's just roll with we'll roll with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we couldn't figure out a way to get a DP, and so then I was like, you know what? I'll do it. And so specifically on anamorphic and the camera that we had, which is the Black Magic pocket camera,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is a really good deal, by the way. I know it's kind of a cheaper camera, and so you're not gonna get, it's not a red or what it is, but
Mm-hmm.
um, if you add enough stuff to the rig, we really enhance what it is. And so by that time when we started filming, it was just perfect, and we did a lot of research on just lighting because the way anamorphic is with our camera, we had to really manipulate some of the light because we wanted that those like lens flares.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, put some lights in the back, whatever it is. But anyway, but overall, that's how I got to actually just doing DP work. And so now that I got used to working with that camera for about 2 weeks, um, if we need to use it for any other project, and if we are not the writers or the directors and we're just the production company that people want to use, now we have the ability to do that now that I got familiar with this camera.
Nice, nice. Was that a process you were intimidated by? Because it sounds a lot like you were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna, like, let me do some research and I feel good about this. Like, were you at all intimidated by that process?
What? Yeah, 100%. Because honestly, what I had in mind too was just like the not the idea that my peers will see it, but that they'll know that it was my first thing that I shot like professionally. That wasn't just something that was my own. That I shot someone else's project, and so then I'm like, okay, like I know it's our first project, but I want to really take my time with it. And so we had a slight like schedule like crunch that we had to do, and so we had to kind of speed some things up. But the good thing is that we were able to improvise a lot of the shots, fix a lot of things like there, any obstructions that we might have had when we were filming. Um,
Especially like because of the scale. Like, I feel like it's a lot easier to just kind of improvise certain ideas if it doesn't work.
yeah, it's especially since Alex had wanted a lot of static shots and just had it really simple. It made my job a lot easier. So I was able to just really shut down the setup that we had and then just take my time with how it was gonna look, what kind of lights I wanted to use. Um, Thankfully, we didn't have to use like big lights and gels and stuff like that. We had these like little LED ones. They're like literally like this tiny, and they had like different features on there.
Oh, like the little apertures.
Exactly, and so they had like every feature you can think of, and so they also had for example, we filmed a fire pit scene, and so those lights had a feature for fire, and so it'd flicker, and so that made our job easier. And it went back to the root of why we did that short film and why we created that production company was just to really like invest in this like type of guerrilla filmmaking and um, just produce as many shorts as we can. Um, just so like and not like over budget ourselves or overthink certain ideas, and things were just always going to be like really simple to do.
So sort of like as ideas come up, it's just like, you know what, let's put this together real quick. Whatever it becomes, it becomes.
Exactly, because we want to go about filmmaking in not in like a leisurely way, but in a, I guess, like, yeah, in a leisurely way where we don't have to feel intimidated making something,
Hmm.
where we don't have to worry about certain things that we need for our camera if we need a different lens or whatever it is. So, for example, right now we're trying to invest in more lenses because right now we just have a 50, and so we're gonna get the full setup or the full set because I don't want to get like 150 of the lens that we have and then get a different type of lens and then switch off from those. I'm like, it's just not going to look good. So I'd rather just stick to one set per short film. And so we only had a 50 to work with. And then we also had to rent out a 24 of the same brand. And so we just switched off on the 24 and 50 like every day or like every scene.
Hmm.
But I like that because it challenged us to really figure out how to shoot something on a 50. And then it kind of reminded me of people who would just shoot stuff on like on 16 millimeter on film where they didn't have a lot of resources where it was just kind of a fixed image that they had to work with. Um, so that's something I kind of kept in my mind when I was filming, and then that kind of helped me figure it out as I went along.
I've personally wanted to sort of indulge in an analog format. I personally have yet to work in anything analog. I've shot some secondary footage on Super 8 for a few projects, but predominantly most of my work has been
Yeah,
digital. And I like that idea of just like you kind of can't get up. Like this is what the image is, and like you don't know what's gonna happen to it until you get the dailies back, and then you're like, like, you know,
that's the scary thing. Like, so I also have an 8 one too.
yeah.
I don't know when the last time I used this,
Oh wow.
but I still have undeveloped film in here, and it's funny because I just shot like everything on this one. So like how you said, like you just have to wait until the dailies come back and just to see how it is. If you messed it up, or if the film's no good, which is another big fear that people have is just like is it not good when you get it back?
Yeah.
Um, but I've always been a big fan of film of like analog of film,
Oh, same.
any type.
Yeah. Oh, same. Every time. Maybe I'm a little biased because like one of my favorite directors is Christopher Nolan, and everything is on
Yeah,
70 mil. And it's been sort of an ongoing, like not like a career goal, but like sort of a bucket list thing that I'd like to do. Is like I'd like to shoot an entire project on one analog format, and I'd like to.
right,
I think again, it is that fear of just like how is this going to come out in post, and if I'm justifying it to this production company for them to spend this much on getting it developed, this much on buying the film, and like I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. And I think before I sort of delve into the more expensive medium, like 16 mil, 35 mil, I want to shoot a couple things on 8 and then kind of go from there. Just sort of see how I feel confidence wise to see if I can be able to do it in the first place. But yeah, I'm
right.
with you. I like these sort of analog format of things. I think um, I get it that like everything is sort of moving more towards digital and like you see a lot of computer generated elements, but it's nothing like that like tangible image. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you can't replace
And
that.
I agree with you because like for the stuff that I shoot, like for This Sucks, I was really pushing the idea. I'm like, I want to be not have it as a gimmick, but like just have that analog look, like have it have that 16 mil look because I'm like we already have the anamorphic lenses. I'm like so we can just play it off like if it's 35, and
Yeah.
so we got these we didn't want to do LUTs, and so we did like a deep dive in how to properly color the film on top of adding grain because before I would just add grain and then just kind of like mess with the filters a little bit.
Mm.
But that was like a cheap and fast way of doing it, and so we did this whole import into DaVinci because we got it with our cameras. We got the actual subscription with it, and we got all the features that it came with, and so we just really were able to go into the nitty gritty of like coloring it to make it really look like if it was 35. And so when we went back and rewatched it, I was actually pretty impressed with the fact that we kind of not obviously there's a huge difference between digital 35 and then regular 35, which
Hmm.
is good. Like that's the whole point that I want to bring the idea that 35 should never die. Like people should keep shooting stuff on film.
Amen.
And of course, that's also my ultimate goal of just shooting stuff on film. 1635 and I mean fingers crossed 65 eventually.
70.
Um yeah, if your project ever gets shown on 70, I'm buying 30 copies of all of it
I would love to
because
just
that's
seeing.
that is insane.
I remember seeing an interview with Hoyt Van. I'm definitely gonna butcher the pronunciation, so I'm not gonna say this not knowing that pronunciation. But I
It's
remember seeing
Dutch, it's all
an
right.
interview. I remember seeing an interview he did with IMAX where he was talking about sort of his process with Oppenheimer. He's like, yeah, it feels like a mini fridge, but my camera system was telling me like it's massive, but once you get kind of a like your adjustment there, like it feels pretty good. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, I could not try to manage a mini fridge. As it is, I have a really hard time with like a mini and like an Area Laura. So like that, not that that camera package is like very heavy, but it's like even with like an easy rig, I'm just like, damn, like how do you even like maneuver this, And then I think I'll get maybe I'll get to that point. We'll see, but yeah, it's definitely it's a goal of mine for sure is to shoot something in an analog format. I think that's like a really cool thing to sort of experiment and explore, and I think we just need that still.
Yeah, and it's funny how you say that because I can just imagine you like throwing on this ginormous like mini fridge onto your shoulder because I saw him do that in the behind the scenes for Oppenheimer, and he just like yanks it over his shoulder. No shoulder mount too, just a
Just
flat
raw dog.
metal, just on yeah the entire time on his shoulder with the close up of Killian Murphy. I'm like, how are you able to do that? And that camera's loud too.
Yeah,
It is hella loud.
I
So
think
it's just like,
it's funny because every photo there has not been a photo like a BTS photo of him that I've seen without that mini fridge on, on his shoulder, and in my mind I'm like, bro, you gotta be yoked to pick that thing up. Like I could never. Like I've been going to the gym pretty often, and I still feel like a mini is kind of heavy for me. You know what I mean? Like I can't
yeah.
imagine the kind of routine that he has at the gym.
I just love though, he just looks like an everyday type of guy, like his build. And
Yeah,
so when I see him yank that thing on him, I'm just like, he has this like underlying strength that no human has besides him. Like he is able to pick up everything.
he's got a sleeper build for sure. So you've this is obviously you're delving into the DP role. Uh, you've also directed before, right? And you've
Right.
also filled out the producer role. Tell me about like your experience with directing and how it contrasts DPing a project.
Producing sucks. So, okay,
Okay.
well, so no. So, okay, so producing is by far the toughest thing to do. And so, if anyone listening to this, especially you, Alex, if anyone meets a producer and they are just like either in the worst mood possible and you're on set with them, it makes sense because of everything that they just do. And so, I was. It's funny because like with writing and directing, there's like this process that I go with of planning ahead, planning my shots and stuff like that, and just getting into creative mindset. But producing is all business, really.
Mm-hmm.
Producing, you really have to try and stay creative when you're producing. Like when we were doing the Confession of Max, um, it was nice seeing all the shots, all the setups that we were doing, but at the same time, your mind is thinking of all the other aspects of, okay, how long can we be here, and were we being here for too long? Is everyone eating? Is everyone not bleeding? Um, whatever the problem may be. But from what I've experienced, um, producing is very, very tough. And so that's why for this next project that I'm working on, I want to make sure that everything is just like, step by step. I'm getting extra help along the way when I'm filming it. Because if I'm going to be the DP writing and directing it, I can only do so much as a producer on set.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've learned is that if I'm ever going to write and direct something, I need to let someone else deal with the rest because it is too much. So I don't know how Nolan does it because he produces his stuff with his wife, and so
Insane.
I don't know how he handles that at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. A lot of Red Bulls.
Probably,
Probably a
probably
lot of Red Bulls.
with his wife, by the way. So
Yeah.
there's two main producers. It's him and his wife. That is insanely tough.
Especially something that's so mentally taxing at times. Like the work is so rewarding, unbelievably rewarding. But
Yeah,
you have like such long days on set, and it's just like you go home, you go to bed, a few hours later you wake up, you're back at it. Like that takes a toll on you in any department, like even for myself, I'm very adamant about like taking care of like my mind and my body, making sure everything's good, and I'm wondering
yeah.
what you do for yourself and for your own mental sanity, especially when it comes to directing, because I feel like that's a very intimate process, because every project is so intimate for you, I guess.
Yeah, and so I'm actually glad you asked that because when I think about something that I want to direct and just have these images and stuff like that, I just try my best to listen to music, but specifically classical music. I feel like every person who's creative should listen to classical music just as a form of just keeping yourself in check because I feel like for myself if I'm directing on set the day before or whatever it is, listening to classical music has always helped me. And so I'd recommend it to you if you ever want to try that. Because I've realized like when I'm even writing, I can't listen to anything with lyrics because if I'm like trying to like figure out dialogue or whatever it is, and I hear someone else talking to me,
Mm.
then I'm like I just lose it. And so, but when I'm listening to classical music, I like try and dive in to find a certain type of mood that helps me flesh out whatever I'm writing or help me storyboard properly. Um, but aside from like getting into the right mindset and stuff like that, it's bad to say, but I remember Spielberg said something about like how film is this person's therapy or it's his therapy because like I've always thought like I have been investing into therapy for I don't know how long or like trying to do it. But then I have this fear of like, but what if I can't write after I go to therapy? I'm like, well, writing is my therapy. So then I'm like, what if I go to therapy and I just lose all of it? And so, so that prevents me from doing that.
Well, okay, if it makes you feel better, I've personally been going to therapy for about a year and a half. Um,
Good.
Again, this is just part of me keeping my mental health in check, especially between projects. I'm very adamant about doing that. It just helps you clarify certain things that maybe you have a question about, and it helps you kind
Mm,
of understand where certain things come from. It isn't like, we have this misconception of artists have to be these broken people, and the process of the art has to be so destructive in themselves. And it's like, in reality,
right.
art can come from sort of any place in life. It just
Yeah,
happens to be
absolutely.
that the sort of negative transpires a lot of the time. We live in a world where like sensationalism is a big deal. So pulling on
Yeah.
these like extreme negatives, we view that as like this is where creativity comes from, when that's not really the case. I feel like I've gotten in a headspace to where I feel really solid with myself, and that's actually allowed me to sort of create better work, and allows me to sort of focus, keep my eyes on the prize, like instead of thinking
Yeah.
about like where is this coming from. It allows me to properly tap into what it is the director's looking for and what it is that needs to be said
story wise. You know, I feel like I can hone in on. It's like the idea of playing classical music, like because you have this sort of I don't know how to phrase it, but like because it allows you to have a certain level of focus and
Yeah.
clarity. I'm not like I'm focused on what it is people are looking for instead of thinking about something that's going on in my personal life because I know how to deal with those things. I can just sort of be like, okay, cool. Let's not focus on that right now. Let me focus on what like if I was working with you, I'd be like, let me focus on what Ricky's looking for. Right? He's
Right.
got a vision. Let me see what the character needs to be like. You know, like let me get into this world real quick. You know.
Yeah.
That's just my advice. Like I found it to be actually more productive to the creative process, and it's really cool that you sort of listen to classical music. I was speaking with another friend of ours, Daniel Strudy, and
Hmm.
he does kind of a similar thing,
Yeah.
you know. But it's really cool. I thought it was really interesting that you also mentioned that like music is like such a big thing for your creative process. You know.
Yeah, and so like I've written a bunch of feature scripts that hope to be made one day. But it's funny because like each of them are so different from one another, but I've listened to different types of classical music for all of them. And it's funny because you listen to all that music and it sounds like it's like one, they're like all kind of strung together almost. And so that's something that I just want to accomplish like in my career is being able to make something different from the next. And so have something that's a drama that is, you can tell is inspired by um, this kind of Beethoven music or by Mozart, but then you think, oh, but this is like a different headspace, but to me it's all the same. So I just all
Mm.
have the same type of writing headspace because it helps me figure out exactly the tone that I want. Um, and so it can be the most peaceful sounding thing and it be just like a shit up comedy or whatever the genre may be.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
How is
that's something
that?
I realized.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. No, go ahead.
How is that? Has that creative process at all changed like throughout the years? Because to my understanding, you've been directing since maybe 2017, 2018, sort of officially. Like we'll say that.
Yeah, it's been. You said how's it been different?
Yeah. How has that sort of creative process changed like throughout the years? Has it been pretty consistent? Has this been like sort of something new that you discovered about your creative process? Like what is how has that evolved?
The great thing is that um, once I started to read more, that's when I really started to hone in on what I liked and what I wanted. Because before I was just straight up influenced by films, and so I found myself either imitating other things or just being in the headspace that what I had to make had to be kind of like the movies that I liked. And so people could relate it that way. Then during the pandemic, I started to read a lot more and I started to play paper. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, whatever it is, did the crossword puzzles. Um, I would do Wordle all the time. And I realized that like just um, having paragraph and stanzas in front of me so often during the pandemic really helped me as a filmmaker because then I started to be able to break down specific things that I liked. And so when I would show up to set on my projects I would do before the pandemic, I was just kind of like not making it up as I went along, but just like I would get to a certain point where I'm like, huh, I don't know what I want to do for this. I wrote it out this way, but as a director, I can't envision it for some reason.
Hmm.
And that was my biggest issue. But now with everything I'm writing, um, I would write everything kind of out as a treatment, but I'd be so into detail about what everyone was doing. If someone like turned over a page or opened a knob, whatever it was, I kind of wrote it out like kind of like how Tarantino does it. I don't want to mention him, but
Sure.
I don't
Yeah.
want to sound like that guy, but that's how he does it. So he writes it out like a book. Um, and so I tried that out, and it does also work for me. And so just writing it out as this treatment, present tense, past tense, whatever it is, that's helped me do it. But then on top of that, what really kind of stuck with me as a filmmaker, and I think will forever stick with me as a filmmaker as the fundamental reason for me maturing as a person and as a creative artist is um, really taking it easy. And what I mean by that is just for all of my work that I'm doing, not that I'm not taking it seriously, but that I'm taking my time with it. I don't know how to explain it actually. Hold on.
To sort of make sure like you get your
Um,
process right.
that and just to not, yeah, to not be so serious about what I'm doing.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is like if I'm making something that's very serious and very in detail, that if someone were to ask me, oh, why did you pick this? Why'd you pick that? It's more of just like you kind of feel it out and you see what works, what doesn't work. Um, and sometimes you don't have to have a specific reason of why you do certain things on set or why you have a creative choice. And so Paul Thomas Anderson was a big reason why I kind of matured as a filmmaker because I would watch some of his interviews that he would do and some things that he would say, and I expected him to have like this grand answer for why he did things. And I remember there was a Q&A that someone had done at one of his films, and it's a very complex movie. And so I would also have those complex questions for him, but his response would just be kind of like a shrug and be like, I kind of just liked it. And that
Yeah.
kind of influenced me to be like, sometimes it could just be like that. Sometimes it could just be I just like this, and then I don't overthink what I do, and then I kind of just really take my time with everything and be like, whatever this is, maybe it can make it very complex, but it could just be something that I like, and there doesn't have to be a complex answer to it.
Yeah. I definitely feel the same way. There was a recent, I'll say fairly recent, music video that I did. It was a black and
Mhm.
white music video. I'm sure you saw it. It's called In Denial.
Mhm.
A lot of my creative choices were sort of like, I was given sort of the basic structure of like what the video would be. And like, hey, we're looking for more of this noir-esque style music video. And I said, okay, let's see what I can let me see what I can do. And so I sort of drafted certain ideas, and when it came to production day, like it was the same thing. It was like it just sort of felt right, and I just it was all kind of taste,
Yeah.
especially for certain rain shots that we had. I really wanted that to sort of uh, pop. And there was only really one way we can do it, at least given the
Mhm.
studio size and like what we can do in that space with the rain machines limitations and stuff. And yeah, it
Yeah.
just sort of it was one of those things where it was like I didn't methodically think of what this was going to look like. It was more just like, okay, let me put this light here and see how it feels. And then we set up the light. I was like, you know what, this feels right. Let me stick to this. And
Yeah.
that was sort of the workflow for that project. And then there's obviously certain projects where you want to be more specific, right? So for those, I try to stick to what that language needs to be and sort of, um, what it is that the vision is. But for stuff like that, it's like, yeah, it's taste, and it feels right, you know.
Right. And how did you do that rain? Was it just the hose you guys just used, or what was that?
So it was in a studio in Boyle Heights, and
Uh huh.
basically, we had this rain rig that was sort of built into the studio. So there was a platform. It was a big black.
Oh
It was
wow.
a big black psych stage. Um,
Mhm.
so we had it on a wooden platform on top, and then we had this sort of circular rain machine. It was like a circle form, and then we had another square around that rectangle. So it was like quite a bit of rain, like from
Yeah,
what we saw.
that's why I asked because it looked realistic to the point. I'm like, I can't think you imitate a hose like that because then you'd have to kind of manipulate it so it can fall like rain versus just having water just pouring down.
Yeah, and the main problem was that the pattern wasn't very consistent. So it was very
Mm-hmm.
splotchy. It looked like it came out of a hose, kind of. So we kind of had to angle ourselves a certain way where we can kind of catch the most rain, kind of around our lead singer. And then what we did was we got another plate for post, and where we just got rain. Just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this will be another element that we can layer onto the so that main silhouette shot of him just kind of with his head down, like profile where he's doing his thing. That's two different elements,
Right.
you know. So we have the rain that's coming around him, and then for the main sort of foreground rain, that was another plate that we had to get for post. Um, but yeah, it was sort of like a subjective thing. It was like, you know what, this feels right. Let me tweak this a little bit so we can get a little bit more rain in post, and that's it. You know, I felt really good about that. You know.
Yeah, that's why like going back to like how I've been working in TV for a bit, and I've seen all the personalities, all the producer talk, whatever it is. And just like I've been in that world for about 2 years now, and hearing a lot of what hearing a lot of what they do and how it all just runs in the TV world. There's just something about it though that just holds me back, which is why what I'm doing now works for me because I love who I work with. Everyone on that set is amazing. Everyone is super cool. Just one of the best people I've ever met. And so the cool thing is that we don't shoot for long. We only shoot maybe 3 to 4 days a week. And so after those days, even though they're kind of long, I mean, those days are almost like 14, 15. But once those days are over, then my plan is to just be creative on the days that I'm off. And so once I finish being creative on those days, filming something, writing, whatever it is, I kind of go back to work because working on different shows and seeing all those personalities just wasn't for me. And there's something about the film world that I'm just attached to. Like people have asked me on that set, like, "Oh, what do you want to do in TV?" And I'm honest with them, like I don't want to be in TV. I'm like I'm here to work and I'm here
Mm,
to meet people, make connections, and learn. And I'm like I'm young. I'm only 22,
right.
and there's people that are PAing with me who are 30 and above. And so and at that point, it makes me feel better to just be where I'm at for now for at least the season. Um, because there's something about the TV world again that doesn't sit right with me. I don't know
Interesting.
what it is. It's just a personal thing. Nothing like people can work in TV and that's just like their workflow. That's what they like. Um, and maybe it's the consistency of how TV works that people do like. But just I can't imagine myself not being creative for that long. Like there's just a lot of creative people in that set that I've met where I'm just like you can't like you guys shouldn't be here or you guys should be doing something else, and they kind of just stick to that one thing and they stick to it forever.
Hmm.
Because that's what they're good at, and so they just kind of stick to whatever that is. Um, and so that's why I'll always have that tie to film because maybe that's a whole other beast within itself of people and egos, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, but the fact that for the most part, if there's a film that's being made, there's one creative process with it. Of course, there's the business aspect and whatever it is, but for the movies that like really matter and the movies that do make a difference, and the thing is, all movies I've realized mean something, and what I mean by that is like you asked me like how have I changed as a filmmaker from 2018 to now.
Mm-hmm.
Back then I was like, anti superhero, anti all that stuff because I'm just like it's taking up space for the true cinema that's out there for all the Christopher Nolan movies. Like it's
Right.
taking up space.
Yeah.
But going through college and graduating, I've realized I'm glad things are being made. I'm glad one of the biggest industries in the world is film. Um, that something is being made for everyone. Am I gonna go see the next Fast and the Furious movie? No, but there are fans out there who love those movies,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why? I'm like, why take that away?
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
like,
with you.
yes, I'm like, well, yes, it's not Oppenheimer. Yes, it's not, Citizen Kane, whatever it is. Um, but I'm like, those movies are doing something to people. I'm like, if someone is able to make something, I'm like, that is fantastic. Whatever
Absolutely.
it is, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'll always just go back to film, because I feel like I have to be part of that process of making something that people like in that way. Because, talk shows, game shows, those will always be on. That's entertainment. But when you're making something that could mean something, and you don't know if it means something when you're making it, sometimes you can be making something really bad.
Yeah.
But just the idea that people are working on something that could mean a lot to other people, um, pushes me a lot. And it
Yeah.
pushes me to just keep going at it, because I can't think of anything else I'd rather do than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you work primarily in unscripted television. Do you think maybe you would feel differently working on something scripted? Like, I know personally, I haven't delved into television work myself, but I would love to work on a miniseries or like some TV
So
show of some kind. Like, I'm wondering if you feel differently about television in that sense, like working on a miniseries or a television show where something's scripted.
so I don't. I didn't originally, because I wanted to work on scripted shows. Like that would have been really cool, because then that's my segue into what I actually want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But again, after working 2 years in unscripted and meeting the people that I've met, all of them have told me working in scripted is just a big nightmare. Like, the people suck, producers suck, whatever it is. And then you hear it so often, though, to the point where it's like, well, maybe that's just subjective, and people just don't like that environment of working in something that's like that, working on a miniseries for like HBO or something. Um, and they just like, again, like the workflow of unscripted, not having to worry about changing the format, because The Price is Right is a format that works. It's been going on for 52 years or 52 seasons,
Yeah.
and so to them that works, and so they've come to like that. And so I've been indifferent about doing scripted and unscripted because of just what I've heard about how that world is.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? Like, again, I'm too young to say no. I'm too. Yeah, I can't say no to that opportunity. And if it
Yeah.
does come about, I will do it, and I
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
Um, and it would be nice. It would be fun. But I guess it depends on, like, yeah, like what you do on that set. Then maybe will make or break whether or not you wanted to do it. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess it's really just waiting to see how it goes. But I would want to take the opportunity. I feel like I can't say no to those opportunities.
No, definitely, I'm with you. Like, I think if I was given the opportunity to DP um, some scripted series or some mini series of some kind, like, I'm definitely in television. I've done a few episodes for an unscripted show for one season. Like, my
Right.
experience is fairly limited, so I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm open to sort of this idea of being able to, because here my thing is like, I think with like a mini series or like a television show, I think it allows you to sort of expand on like the nuances of certain ideas, and it sort of
Yeah.
allows you to kind of build this world over years and possibly even decades. So for something like if a show runs as long as like The Price is Right or like The Walking Dead, right? Like, those shows are
Yeah.
going on forever, it feels like. But I'm definitely open to that. I'm with you. I'm definitely not anti that medium. I think um, is definitely something I want to experiment in myself. Generally, I think keeping yourself, like what you were saying before, like keeping yourself sort of in this one role or this one type of work, rather, feels limiting at times.
It does. And yeah, like how I was saying before, like, and what you were saying, it does feel like you're never gonna leave that spot. And so I also PA'd for OBB Studios on what's her name? I forgot her name. Oh, Haley Bieber. So she has a cooking show on YouTube, and so I worked on that show,
Oh, nice.
just being a PA. But yeah, like there's something though about being that in that spot where I'm just like, I don't know if I could barely do it for a few months, and so that's why I'm like I feel like I constantly need that change to know that I won't always be doing that, and like those people that are just those grips and uh those stage managers that always just work on The Price is Right or on unscripted shows, and then that's what they do. Or I also worked on The Talk, which is just a talk show, and like those people, they show up at 7, film a live taping at 11, and then by like 1 or 2 o'clock they're done, and they do that every day, Monday through Friday. And so then and then it's just like I can't do that. Like I can't see myself having the TV version of the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Um, and so again, that's why like TV is the probably the biggest thing. Maybe it's even bigger than film. But there's an aspect of film that lets you be. I don't even say free, but it allows you just to do more and enables people who don't think they can do more to do it. Kind of like
Interesting.
myself.
Yeah.
Like I like when I did This Sucks. Um, I felt like I'm like I don't know if I can do like what you do. Like I don't know if I can not replicate, but like try and have the same process as you or any other DP that's been doing it for a while. I'm like I don't want my stuff to be amateurish. That's just not what I want to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
right now,
Yeah.
I don't want to attempt that. And so then you have that fear of doing that. But again, since it's a short film, since it's us, since it was a personal project, it allowed me to just take my time, like how I said, just kind of go along with what I liked,
Yeah.
and there didn't have to be this whole process behind it. Um, and there's just so many films that I've seen where I hear like the behind the scenes of it, and then that's just how they go about it, and so then I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So kind of like how what Paul Thomas Anderson does with his films, where he'll like an idea, he'll like an actor, and he'll just write around the actor, write around this idea, and just expand on that, and then something really beautiful may come up from that.
Yeah.
You know.
And going back to like This Sucks, and from my understanding, this is sort of your first time. We spoke about it earlier. This is sort of your first time taking the helm as the DP, right? Um, Everybody's creative process is different, right?
Yeah.
We could have taken the same script, the same tools, the same resources. Inevitably, we're going to shoot something that's different. And it's taste,
Right.
I think. Not that it's wrong. I mean, obviously there's bad lighting, there's bad blocking,
Absolutely.
there's that sort of thing, but the interpretation of the script and sort of what you want to do lighting wise, it's not wrong. It's just different.
Yeah.
Like I would
Yeah.
have
Absolutely.
taken this and probably done something different for sure. Um by the way, this looks great, especially for kind of first round as a director of photography. You know, I'll
Thank
give you
you.
your flowers there. But it's not your process isn't wrong. It's just different. And I think
Yeah.
inevitably, like I've done the comparison of like, oh, what is like when what was it called? That sort of period when Chivo was being nominated like 3 times in a row or something. Like he won three
Oh
Academy Awards
yeah.
in a row. That sort of period, I was like, I'm gonna throw
Yeah.
everything on a wide angle. Like this is gonna be my flow now. Like, it's gonna be great. And that comparison, I think, sort of robbed me of exploration of different ideas that I could um, delve into. And I think now I'm at a point where I'm more refined in my look, and I know what I want to say in terms of like the medium of cinematography. I have a
Right.
bit more refined references. Like I can pull things from Chivo that I like. I'm like, oh, I remember seeing this from this film. I'm gonna maybe experiment doing this for this sort of scene because I like the way it could fit in. Or like Gordon Willis, literally the Prince of Darkness. I
Yeah.
expose at what I'll call a lower octave, and I aspire to be sort of like the protege of is sort of in the dark, that sort of thing. And even more recently, like Greg Fraser, the Batman is beautiful, and I'm
Yeah,
pissed it wasn't
absolutely.
even nominated. Right? Um, though you know, those are the sort of curations that I build for myself in order to refine what it is that I want to say. You know,
Yeah.
and you could take those same references and do something completely different. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
It it's funny you say that though about Greg Fraser because like I think about like your style, and I'm just like it kind of reminds me of how Greg Fraser is. Like I don't know what it is. There's like a big similarity between yours and his, where it's not. I'm not saying it's definitely not copying, but like yours is so like distinct. So when I see Greg Fraser's and like how he lights certain shots and how he um I think that was his biggest thing is his the lighting and his cinematography. I'm like, that's something that reminds me of yours. And so like when I see something you've shot, like it's not hard for me to be like, oh yeah, Alex shot that, which is really great for someone like your age. You
that's
know,
love,
like
man. Thank you.
you already figured out how your stuff was gonna look, and maybe not. It won't look like that forever. You know, you will maybe eventually change, obviously, with new cameras or whatever it is, taste, whatever it may be. But the fact that you've developed something that's so distinct already is pretty huge.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the love for that. And I think inevitably, like as we age, sort of tastes do change, but I think sort of the foundation of it is for sure going to remain the same. Like you look at the way that Picasso's work has sort of evolved through time. Like I'm sure you've seen sort of the picture of like his self portraits all kind of lined up together, and by the end of his life, it just didn't look like him, but it felt like him. You know, and I think
Yeah,
inevitably,
absolutely.
like the look may change, but foundationally, it's still gonna feel like you in some sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like maybe you want to take a like what you mentioned earlier about like doing like a more serious piece versus like a comedy. Like they're two starkly different mediums, but I think having that foundation set and being able to recognize that like, oh, this is a Ricardo Vasquez film. Like
Yeah.
that's never gonna change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like for the past projects that I've done, I mainly did it during the pandemic. Um, they kind of had like all similar ideas where they're all non-dialogue, all visual. Um, and so then now I'm just like, okay, I want to make something that's a little bit different. And then after that, just either have it black and white, have it in color, aspect ratios is different, and just for myself as a filmmaker to not limit how something can look because at the end of the day, I'm also writing and directing whatever shorts I'm shooting,
Yeah.
and so then um, I'm fine with not having a style yet, but like thematically, all of his films have some underlying theme that are similar to each other, but they all look very different.
Yeah.
And so then that allows him to either be like he was a DP on Licorice Pizza, and
Oh,
that looked
really?
different from his last movie. Yeah,
I
which is
didn't know
pretty
that.
cool. So he stopped working with his cinematographer Robert Elswit back in 2014, and so when he made Phantom Thread in 2017, there's like no, if you look it up, there's like no credited cinematographer
So he was the
because it was like a
DP
whole
on Phantom
collaboration.
Thread as well.
Yeah, so it was like him and like two other camera ops that were like kind of credited as a cinematographer for the movie. But if you go under cinematography for Phantom Thread, it'll have him as uncredited because there's like multiple people involved in that project.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm googling it now. It says he's actually credited as the DP. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, that collaboration with still is there with the operators as well. Like you know, that is very much like
yeah,
a
and so
unique look for that film as well, which is really that balancing act between director DP I couldn't do, you know.
I think that's the biggest thing I really want to do is be able to do both. And I know I wasn't always a DP, and I didn't think I would ever dive into that, but I'm like I can't be so limited as a filmmaker. Like when I did sound on Scam Girl,
Mm-hmm.
which is a short film that we both worked on. I was like, I want to do sound, or I want to edit something. I want to color something. I want to produce something. Just so when I go to set on my own short film, or yours, or whoever's, um, I can possibly take on all the roles at the same time because I just like it.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't have to be credited as the sound operator. As
Yeah.
long as it's done, I don't care. I don't care about being credited as everything.
Yeah.
As long as it gets done.
Yeah. And for myself, like for me, anyways, when before I started to intentionally be like, hey, I'm going to DP things. For me, I always thought it was instilled in me that it was important to understand what it is that other roles are doing, because you're a department head. You're sort of captain of the visual per se. And
Right.
for me, it was sort of important to understand what it is that I'm asking my team to do. Like, I'm not going to ask my camera assistant to do something that I never did as an AC. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not going to ask my grip to rig something that I know is going to be incredibly dangerous unless I would feel comfortable doing it myself. And that's always been something that's like
Yeah.
important for me, because like it's easy for me, having not have done those things, to ask for these ridiculous things.
Mhm.
And because I have the knowledge in my Rolodex, I know that like this is going to be ridiculous to ask them to do these certain things. And I really appreciate you sort of keeping in mind these different roles as well, because especially as the scale of production increases, you know, you want to understand not the limitations, but sort of what it is you're asking of people. And I deeply
Yeah,
admire the
absolutely.
fact that you're wanting to diversify into different roles, even if it's just a basic level of understanding. I think foundationally, it's still going to apply to the largest scale of productions you work on.
Yeah, and it also unifies yourself with other people that you just meet on sets. Like if you are able to know at least a little bit of everything, you're not in the dark when you stumble across someone. Like if I'm talking to a grip or talking to whoever on The Price is Right, we don't have completely different worlds. Like we don't have to be like that. And so like sometimes like the whole idea is like producers on one side, grips on the other. Like they do their, everyone are like little ants kind of operating at the same time, but never having to interact with each other. But if I'm ever working on a film or a short film, and everyone has their distinct roles, I mean, for myself, I would want to be able to have that collaboration with everyone, knowing those different aspects that they know.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely really important, because you want to consider all these people, especially for, you know, these long days. You know, you want to consider every aspect of the job, and what sort of headspace they could be in, especially, you know, as I've considered more of my mental health as like the DP role. I wish I was a little bit more conscious of this when I was camera assisting or when I was camera operating a bit more
Yeah.
regularly. You know, like now that I have the sort of tools at my disposal, I can understand. Okay, I can only push these guys um, so far, I guess. And I have this
Yeah.
understanding of like, hey, we understand this process together, and we're in it for the long haul per se.
Hmm.
Um, you know, so I think that's an important thing. So moving forward, you're wanting to, besides sort of understanding these different roles, what's sort of next for you in terms of your creative career?
Definitely just pumping out all the short films that I can. But on top of that, um, I had an issue of figuring out what would be my first feature film. Like, would it be X, Y, or Z? And then as I would go through those scripts, I would be like, just I can't make that on a budget, or not on the budget that I have, or whatever it is. And I would just start to think of like a grand picture of what I would want to do, and then ultimately, I couldn't because I'm just like, I don't have the money for that, and I don't have the ability to do that. Until I figured out an idea that I had where it finally made sense to me because it's so personal and it makes the most sense for myself to make it. And so I see myself working towards making that short film on a very small budget. And again, same environment where it's like easier schedule. You shoot it when you can. You get the money when you can. All at least most of the equipment will be ours or mine. So now I don't have to do a lot of rentals, loans, all that issues, and really work towards making that short film being the best that it can be. Um, because I want to shoot it cheap, but I'll also make it look like it's just you know not inexpensive. Um, but yeah, ultimately, just working constantly either on that show that I'm working on or other shows because I think I might be able to work on another game show called Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah.
Because that's like right next to it. But um, besides doing working on TV, I can't see myself not having a. I can't see the next 2 years not being centered on working towards that one feature film. Because I have been telling myself for like like a few years like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Feature film, feature film. But I'm like, I have nothing at my disposal to support that. I had nothing to really show for it. Um, so I felt foolish, but at the same time, I was still younger. It was before I was even 20 that I was saying that.
Yeah.
And so the pandemic, going through college, graduating, all that stuff really helped me mature and realize what I'm able to do. And so now that I'm writing this kind of personal project and having the full scale of it and really seeing what I'm able to do with it, has helped me be able to think, okay, yes, I can actually do this fairly soon, but fairly soon as in like the next 2 to 3 years, more or less.
So first stop
But
is
that's just the ultimate goal.
a short film, and then have that delve into sort of a feature in the future.
Yeah, and hopefully be able to have that exposure to the short and to say, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I'm gonna make. Do you guys want to see more of this? Can this be something else? Can this be something bigger? Rather than just make something cheap or whatever it is, because we worked on a feature film about almost 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Is it 4 years ago?
About
2019.
4.
Yeah, and we learned a lot of lessons from that one, and so we know what to do, what not to do, and so thankfully being a producer in that one has taught me a lot about that. Like I feel like at least for myself, like sped up my maturing process as a filmmaker and being like, you're way too ahead of yourself. Like you need to slow down a little bit,
No, definitely.
which is good. Like which is great.
Yeah.
I feel like we had to have that at least at some point, at least for myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely for me too. I
and then
had like a big ego
I was gonna
check.
say, yeah,
Yeah.
it's also though like an accomplishment that we were able to craft something that was an hour and a half and have it at least be coherent, have it have pretty good cinematography, um, sound, whatever it is. The fact that we're able to figure that all out together um, impresses me to this day. It's not. Is it the best work? No. Um,
Yeah.
but the fact that it was, I always think though the fact that it was done says a lot about our commitment to it.
Yeah.
So I still respect it because I respect it being a thing and I respect it being there. Um, but again, that helps us make something that's better and make something that um, will mean something a lot more or whatever it may be. And so yeah, definitely making enough short films that can tell people exactly who I am or exactly what I'm going to do. Um, and the important thing is though to have that diversity between all of those short films and have them all be at least a little bit different from each other, just so it can be like, oh, he made this, but this is so different from this. Um, and at least for like people who are interested in what I want to do, like that's at least what I want people to at least think. But also just make stuff that I like, and hopefully other people can just like it too. Um, and I really don't want to have a display of an ego
Yeah.
because it's really just stuff that I like. And sometimes it's like there's like images that I have for certain short films where I just can't get them out of my head. And so it's like I just want to make it so I can just get out of my head eventually. Um, and then also invite people that I know or people that I don't know to work on it just so we can have a good time making it, really.
All right. That concludes today's episode of the ALG Show. Wow.
I hit the button this time. Aren't you impressed? I found it. I figured it out. I figured out which one's the right button this time. Uh, I always enjoy talking with Ricky. He's always someone I can riff off of, and is always looking out for me both on and off set. And I always appreciate that deeply, for sure. Go check him out if you haven't already at this point. His info is going to be in the show notes. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.